And a name like Palantir, which is up 165% over 1 year and hit a high of 27 and change, where do you think this is headed and what could drive it downwards?
Yeah, so we ultimately think at some point it's going to be going down to 8.
It's at 21 right now, guys, so go ahead.
It might take a little bit to get there, but what we see is not only from, again, a 23 times price to sales aspect, which we just view as
really
astronomical.
Lofty, yeah.
Yes. Obviously, it came into profitability around 2 years ago, and so that's helped what we believe is this wave kind of pushing it higher.
Well, I can't say that I completely agree with this guy. Doesn't really make much sense. He didn't back up his claims onto why he believes that Palantir will go to $8, other than the fact that there's a gap that needs to be filled and the fact that their EPS and PE ratio aren't that good. Well, sometimes those numbers don't dictate market sentiment or the price of a stock. Hey guys, Corey here. Welcome back to the channel. If you guys like the content and you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and tap that bell so you know when I post new videos. And if you're feeling very generous, you can give me a thumbs up as it greatly helps the channel. The reason I say this guy doesn't really give us strong enough evidence as to why he believes that Palantir should go down to $8 a share. He just says that the EPS isn't good and the PE ratio isn't good. And based on his merit, we've got an EPS of 0.08 or 8 cents a share. And with the share price being $22, that gives us a PE ratio of 275. Now, that's not very good, considering the great range to be in would be between 20 and 25, and a good range, 25 to 50. However, Boeing, even though in a completely different sector, has a share price of $167, and their EPS is negative. And unlike Palantir, who has positive cash flow, positive net profits, and income, they are negative across the balance sheets. So it doesn't always come down to earnings and cash flow to dictate something is only worth what someone else is willing to pay. And you also have to look at forward-looking statements and forward-looking PE ratios and what we expect in the future. And because AI is the future and Palantir's growth has been exponential, one could think that the reason why Palantir is trading at a really high premium is because the belief in the stock and the success that it will have in the future. Unfortunately, Alex Karp seems to be a little unhinged in a lot of different areas. One specifically is the fact that he doesn't believe in having a sales team, and he said that Palantir is so good that it sells itself, and that he would never use a sales team unless him and Palantir were all hit by a bus. Seems to me that's kind of a very odd statement to make when you're the CEO of one of the leading AI companies in the world and you're securing government contracts and now medical contracts, which I'll get to in a minute. It doesn't make much sense. They've been running boot camps only, which is where they've been acquiring a lot of their business, including the new business that I want to talk about in this video. Palantir has cut a deal with Parexel, working on a clinical trial to speed up ability for customers to plan studies and to enhance Parexel's AI healthcare work. Foundry has been adopted for the clinical data platform. It's going to allow customers to speed up trial data. They've also been working together for over a year. First research organization to ever sign such a contract. Palantir not only is working with military, police, and intelligence with the government and abroad, they're now working in the medical sector, which is really good for the company. I just think Alex needs to accept the fact that, hey, you need to have some form of sales team. He is leading a very successful company that's went from being in the hole to being profitable, so they are doing something right. And not only that, Norwegian asset manager DNB has added to their Palantir position and cut Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla. DNB sold 668,000 shares of Apple, 103,000 shares of Tesla, and 750,000 shares of Microsoft. They bought 429,300 shares of Palantir, and now they're sitting on a whopping 753,600 shares of Palantir. So between all of this news, we're really just missing one critical thing, and that is the upcoming earnings. If they beat the estimate, Palantir is going to find a new home in the $22 to $24 range. It's really hard to predict stock prices and movement. It's very difficult. Palantir could beat the earnings and the price could drop to $19 a share, and where they could miss the earnings and the price could go to $25 a share. There's a lot of things that go into where the stock goes and the price that it ends up at, and it's really at what people are willing to pay for it, the supply and demand. There's a lot that goes into an earnings call. If Palantir beats expectations, at least meets it or beats it, that's good. However, if their forward-looking statements for quarter 2, 3, and 4 are not as good or better than this quarter, that will create a little bit of worry or fear, and there'll be some sell-off. And what I mean by that is if Palantir beats the earnings, let's say they don't get 8 cents a share, they get 16 cents a share or 20 cents a share. That's great. But if Palantir's forward-looking statements anticipate that the earnings next quarter are going to be the same or worse with no progress, it'll create kind of a vacuum. It could, and the price could go down. There's a couple of things that we need to see, and I want to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So let's dive into the charts and let me show you guys what Palantir needs, in my opinion, to maintain this price point, because I believe there's a chance Palantir could go down if they miss the earnings. Even if they beat the earnings, I could see Palantir possibly going down. And I can understand what this investor was explaining about Palantir settling in based on their priced earnings as well as their price to sales and their EPS. I do understand what he's saying, but the AI sentiment and the strength of the company working with the government, I believe that holds precedence in this situation, and I believe it's going to hold Palantir a little bit more than maybe he is letting on. I just want to point out that I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. I'm just here to show you guys the technicals, the fundamentals, the financials, show you strategies, and teach you how to run different strategies. But it's ultimately up to you to decide which stocks you want to put your money into and how much of a position you would like to have. Okay, first, I just want to go over what they were saying about Palantir. And this guy was saying that he believes Palantir is going to be overpriced where it's at right now, and he sees it going to $8. Well, first off, if I go to the daily chart, there is the daily gap right here at $20. It's very hard to fill gaps like this. Very hard. You can see it's just not allowing that to happen right now. I don't think if Palantir beats the earnings, I don't think we drop below 20. If they miss, it's possible. If we fill this gap between 17 and 20, odds are we fill the 14 to 17 gap, we could end up back at $15. But that only happens if we miss earnings, and that's my opinion, and the forward-looking statements are grim. Coming down and filling all these gaps back to $8, look, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. I mean, anything can happen. There's no guarantees in life, well, besides taxes, but I don't see it happen. It's just not what I think is going to happen. But let me show you why I don't believe it's logical to talk like this. I'm going to give you proof. So he doesn't think Palantir makes enough money. Okay, so look at the EPS 0.8. We're supposed to be at 0.8 again. That's what the estimate is. And let's look at the financials. Let's look at the income statement for Palantir. Total revenue, $608 million. Gross profit, $499. Operating income, $65. I like to see operating income high. That's pretty decent. Pre-tax income, $106 million. Net income, they made $93 million, more than every other quarter. Year-over-year growth is amazing. We go and look at EBITDA now. Year-over-year growth, excellent. Up to $73 million. Let's look at my favorite, cash flow. We're going to go ahead and look at the cash flow now. Cash from operating activities, absolutely beautiful. $300 million from operational activities. This right here is absolutely beautiful. They made $300 plus million in cash flow from operations. Very, very nice. Investing activities. They're purchasing investments. That's not a bad thing. $51 million from financing activities. Let's take a look at this. So they made $51 million with the sale of some common or preferred stock here. Free cash flow, $296 million. So without a doubt, Palantir is profitable. And they have positive cash flow and very good year-over-year growth in all areas. And they have good cash flow from operating activities. $300 million worth. Now, let's look at Boeing, which trades 8 times higher of a share price than Palantir. Let's look at their income statement. Revenue, $16 billion, which is very high compared to Palantir's $608 million. Boeing's gross profit, negative $14 billion. Operating income, negative 144 million. Net income, negative 343 million. Let's look at cash flow. This is what really dictates a company. Cash from operating activities, negative 3 billion, 3.36 billion. They lost $3.3 billion. And Palantir made over 300 million. Cash for investing activities, 2.07 billion. So the sale of maturity of investments, they made some money off that. Cash from financing activities, negative $4 billion. Where's that coming from? They've incurred more debt. I don't know exactly where that debt's come from. Free cash flow, almost $4 billion in negative cash flow. This is the previous quarter. And the quarter before that, they were positive. Okay? They kind of pooped the bed. All right? They kind of pooped the bed here on the previous earnings. And that was right here recently. And their previous earnings wasn't that good. But look, Boeing's still trading at $167. And I know they're different sectors, but I mean, come on. They're into the intelligence departments. They're into military, policing, securities, data analytics. They're getting into medical. Like, this is the future. Palantir is the future. And with those forward-looking sentiments and some good forward-looking projections and PE ratios, if they meet or beat the expectation on earnings, I just can't see Palantir going to $8. Can Palantir make it to $15 or $17? Yeah, I mean, that could happen. We could see a spike to 24, 25 on earnings on the 6th of May, and then it could drop back to $16, $17, $18 and work its way back up. I mean, that's possible. I don't think it's likely, though. The only way that I see this price right here being broken is with very bad news or moderate news with bad forward-looking statements that the company doesn't believe they're going to beat this quarter in the next quarter. And we would need something like that, maybe even worse, and we would need a market pullback on top. We would need both of those things at the same time to break through this fair value. To break through all of this resistance and all this fair value and get back to 15, it would take a lot. And my opinion, if they beat the earnings on May 6th and they beat it by a decent amount, say 10, 12 cents on the EPS, and their forward-looking statements are as good or better for the next quarter and the quarter after and for the rest of this year, and the outlook forecast on the stock is good and bullish during the earnings, it's my guess that the stock will probably, very highly likely, never see a price below $20 or $21. With everything I've explained in this video, I remain fairly bullish on Palantir. Short term, it's hard to predict due to earnings, but midterm, long term, 6 months to a year or more, I'm bullish on Palantir, especially with the investments from DBS and the new medical and clinical trial contract they just picked up. I believe that partnership, along with the government partnerships and contracts, are going to help Palantir immensely. If only Alex Karp could just get himself together and be a little bit more productive on the sales side of things, I believe Palantir could do even better. And with that being said, it really all comes down to one thing: earnings. If Palantir can match or beat the earnings and the forward-looking statements and projections, the overall forecast financially for Palantir going forward matches the earnings that they have, and it's even better or bullish, then I could see Palantir finding a new home north of $23. Maybe even more than that. However, if Palantir misses earnings, we could see ourselves start to slide into a downtrend, which could potentially put us back in the $15 to $18 range, which would be a buying opportunity. I would just add to my position at that point, because when you invest in a stock, you believe in them long term, not short term. However, I don't see Palantir missing the earnings. I think they're at least going to match it, potentially beat it. I could be wrong, but I do believe in Palantir. But remember, if they don't match the earnings, let's say they miss, this is a long-term game, and I believe in Palantir long-term, because let's face it, Palantir is cash flow positive, they are making profits, and Palantir is getting their income from operations activities, which is critical cash flow to have. Not only are these financials good at showing and illustrating that Palantir is making more profit and showing more year-over-year growth every quarter, but it's also showing that Palantir is the best in the game at what they do. And not only that, Palantir has the potential to make it into the S&P index. That right there would be very good for Palantir. Thanks so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate you. If it's your first time, be sure to subscribe and tap that bell. And if you're feeling generous, give me a thumbs up, as it greatly helps the channel grow. I'll see all of you guys on the next video. And remember, until then, Let's grow our wealth together. Take care, guys.